I have a very fun project that I'm working on this week. So I decided I'm going to take you along with me through the whole process. It's gonna be a bit make it up as I go, as usual. So I'm going to be making a shower curtain this week because we're remodeling our bathroom, and it's kind of a long story, which maybe I'll get into later in the vlog. But essentially I want to add a bit of fun and color and a little bit of like my aesthetic to the bathroom. Even though my whole studio was very specifically planned to be everything that I love, the rest of my house actually does not have a lot of things that I've made in it. And so I'd like to change that. I'd like to add a few more touches of like my personality in my house. So we're gonna make a shower curtain. I'll show you a bit of my mood board here. I've been pinning things on Pinterest for weeks in anticipation of this, and I feel like the more I pin, the more scattered my thoughts have been and the more ideas I have had. So I decided a few days ago, I really just need to simplify it, especially since I could make like the coolest, most intricate shower curtain ever designed, and it would be amazing and wonderful, but it would take me like 3 weeks to make it. And that is just not something I want to put my energy into right now. I want it to be cute. I want it to be something I love, but I don't want to spend weeks and weeks on it. I feel like 3 days is like maximum time that I should be spending on making a shower curtain. So my aesthetic, what we are deciding to go on, my inspiration is kind of like stained glass and translucent tile vibes. I have a window behind my shower or in my shower, so it does get a bit of light from that window through the shower curtain. So I would love it to have a bit of a stained glass vibe to it. And you know, I love quilting and I love patchwork, and so I'm going to make a patchwork curtain that gives stained glass vibes. Now, like I said, I would love to do something super intricate. I had been thinking up all these like amazing, wonderful, complicated quilt blocks to do for this stained glass vibe. But what I decided I need to do is I need to keep it fairly simple. There's a lot of like modern quilts that are very popular and trendy right now that are kind of more of a blocky, rectangular vibe. In fact, the quilt that's hanging up right here, I'll shift you a little bit. This like tapestry quilt thing I made a few months ago. Oh gosh, I guess it was over a year ago now, but I love it. And it was like fun to make. I was using scraps. I just needed a little something to put on my wall. And so I do like that vibe, but I feel like it's very trendy right now. I don't know. I want to try to avoid it a little bit, but at the same time, like I can always make another one down the road. It's not a huge deal if I don't love it in 10 years, right? So I decided to do something more blocky, squarey, rectangular, but I still want it to feel a bit more classic than trendy. So that's my goal and my hope. I don't know, maybe it is still trendy, but that's fine. Who cares? So my main inspiration, I'll put my main inspiration picture here. It's like a greenish mosaic tile, and it almost looks kind of like a gingham to me, which I'm a huge gingham fan. I feel like you probably are too if you're here. If you have a similar aesthetic as me, you probably love gingham too. And so I feel like this very much looks like a gingham. It looks very like fabricy. It's very much my style, but it also does give a bit of that like stained glass vibe. And I love that the greens in it are a little bit translucent. You can like sort of see veins in it. So we're going to attempt to accomplish that with fabric. So what I've done is I went into Illustrator, which is where I do a lot of my pattern making, but I wanted to kind of map out exactly like the size of the squares and rectangles I needed and kind of visualize the colors and everything together. So I have a few different things here. I mean, they're all pretty similar, I guess. Well, there might be a bit of a glare, but this is kind of what I've mocked up here. And you can see this one is very, very similar to what the inspo picture is. I do have a bit of a squiggly border around it. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna do like a squiggly bias binding around the outside. This one I added a little bit of a like pink and red block color situation at the bottom. I don't actually think that I'm gonna end up doing that. I think with all the other details I'm putting in the bathroom, I don't want it to be too busy. And I always err on the side of simplicity anyways. So I'll probably just end up doing the green, but I'm not totally sold on what color of squiggly binding I want on the outside. So that one's pink I showed you. And then these might be overwhelming to look at, but here's a few other squiggly border options. So this one is the pink that I showed. This one is yellow. I feel like I might like that second best. This one is a blue squiggle down there. This one's like a dark brown squiggle. I probably won't do that. So there's a few different squiggle options. I'll probably end up doing, I don't know, I feel like pink, yellow, and blue, I'm sort of tied. I'm just gonna kind of see what fabric I find in the moment. And surprisingly, I actually don't have a ton of solid fabrics already in my stash. I tried to grab out some ones I might be able to use, and there's really not that many. This yellow, I feel like I could potentially use as the squiggle border, but there was nothing that I had already that were the kind of colors that I want for like the main greenish blocks. So we are gonna go fabric shopping. I'm actually headed out right now. Need to get going. We are going to go to the fabric store. We're gonna go to Joann's because, as you probably know, they're going out of business. All the stores I think are gonna be closed by May. It's March now. I do shop there fairly regularly, but this potentially might be my last real Joann shopping trip, which is kind of sad. So we need to go to the fabric store. I also need to run to Target and grab a clear like shower liner because we don't have one of that. We had a glass door in our old shower. I'll probably tell you all about our old bathroom that we tore apart later in the vlog. Let's go run all those errands. My bathroom will be finished up by the end of the week, and I'm hoping my shower curtain can be finished around the same time. I also have a nail appointment in a couple hours, so let's see what we can all get done before school pickup time today. And then hopefully I can get to sewing in the afternoon. Like I said, I think this project will take me about 3 days. So obviously I'll be taking you along that whole process, but I'm just gonna take you through my days too. Take you on my hikes and errands and sewing and whatever else I do. So wish me luck that this doesn't turn into a 3-week project. Trying to see if you can see light through it very well for the stained glass effect. All right, I need to show you everything I got. And if you've been here for a while, you know that I don't do hauls. I really don't go shopping very much for anything. So this is a rare Joann going out of business haul. Some of the stuff is for the curtain, some is not. Oh, I forgot to tell you or show you, I got my nails done. So these are my St. Patrick's Day March Madness birthday nails. My birthday is on St. Patrick's Day, which is the best holiday to have a birthday on. If you have to have a holiday birthday, St. Patrick's Day is the best one. I'm also a big March Madness fan, which is coming up in a couple weeks, and a Ducks fan, of course. We will likely be going to the first round of the tournament, depending on where it is. We go to tons of Ducks games, so excited about that. Anyways, nails. Okay, first fabric is this embroidered cotton. It's like a really pretty, like chambray color almost. Light blue with embroidered hearts on it. I don't know what I'm gonna make with it yet. I just know that it's cute, and I feel like there are a ton of options. So that can sit in my stash for a while. Then, okay, this is the one that I found for the shower curtain, the small squares. I'll put a picture here of the main inspo pic. I feel like this one is pretty dang close to those smaller squares. And let me show you what I got for the bigger squares because I kind of have an idea. So I found 2 different fabrics actually for the bigger squares. These are the 2 fabrics. This one is a basic quilting cotton, and it's kind of like a minty green color, but it's really like light and sheer. And then this one is a thicker like linen fabric almost. Still sheer, still pretty, but this one has a bit more of like grit and grain to it because it is a linen. I really was looking for fabrics that had a bit of a grain to them because the inspo pic is tile, and so you can see like veins in the tile that gives it a little bit of depth and texture. I don't want just like plain quilting cottons, but I knew that it was going to be a bit difficult to find that. So I do really like this one. I feel like out of these 2, this one's my favorite for the bigger squares. However, I had this genius/dramatic idea that maybe I will tea dye the fabrics to give them that kind of like tile look. I've never dyed anything with tea before, but I was looking into it a few months ago because I was considering dyeing some red gingham I had with tea to like tone it down a little bit and make it a little bit more of an earthy red instead of like a bright red. And so I looked into the process of it and it looked doable, and I never ended up doing it. And so now I really am wondering if I could do it with like these two fabrics and maybe even the cream fabric I got for the shower. Here we are. Okay, so these are the three fabrics, like the three colors of the shower curtain, and if I tea dyed all of them, they would all have sort of like brownish earthy veins going through them, but like really, really subtly. I both am obsessed with the idea of doing a tea bath, a tea dye, and mad at myself. It's the feeling where you're mad at your boss for being unreasonable and like keep changing the finish line, you know what I mean? Like, except in this scenario, I'm the boss who keeps changing my mind and making things more difficult for myself. Remember when I said I specifically picked a simple patchwork design so that this wasn't going to take me forever? And here I am thinking of a way to make it more difficult for myself. Okay, let me think about that for a little bit. And then I also got a couple linen white, off-white cream fabrics for the rectangles in the mosaic stained glass curtain situation. This sun is really going hard here. So this one is a 90% cotton, 10% linen, and it's so freaking soft. So no matter what, I'm gonna use this for clothes for sure because it's really, really pretty, really soft, like a perfect whitish neutral. And then this one is a viscose linen blend. You may have heard me talk about it before. I have made several garments out of this type of fabric. I've used the white version, the cream version, there's a black, and there's a few other colors, and I've used all of like the neutrals. And so since Joann is going out of business and I won't be able to get this specific fabric anymore, I had to grab some now. So I got a whole entire fresh bolt of it, 8 yards. And then last couple things, I got this pink linen. I feel like the sun's making it hard to see the right color of it, but it's like a soft pink linen that I think would look cute with the shower curtain, like as the squiggle border. And then possibly the best fabric that I found is the one that I showed you in the store. This is a machine embroidered, it's like a crochet look fabric, but it's not actually crocheted. It's stitched onto this like netting fabric, and then the crochet design is like embroidered onto that, but it's not actually crocheted because I know that machine crochet, at least from my understanding, is not possible. Like, it's not a thing, but this fabric is just so freaking pretty. So I got a ton of it because I think it could be cute as like home stuff. Like, it could be cute curtains, it could be a cute pillowcase, or it could be a cute skirt or a cute pair of shorts, or really anything, a jacket. Yeah, I just got a bunch of it because I knew I was going to do something cute with it eventually. It's just going to take me some time to think of what it is. I'm half tempted to just throw this up in my bathroom and call it my shower curtain. And then I got some interfacing because I feel like that's always something. Interfacing and thread are probably the things I get at Joann the most often because they're the things that I forget to get until I need them immediately, and then I have to run to Joann. So I got a bolt of interfacing and then a couple like packets of interfacing. The store was pretty cleared out, so the choices, the pickings were slim. And then I got a few skeins of this black cotton yarn. It's like a really soft and lightweight cotton, but it is 100% cotton. And I have a black like crochet sweater thing or vest, haven't decided, that I've been wanting to make, so I know I'll use that soonish. Okay, sheesh. I am very sad about Joann closing. Not so much for myself, and I've heard a few other sewing people talk about this. This definitely isn't like a hot take, but I personally don't go to Joann a ton. Like I said, it's mainly for thread or last minute things that I need to run and grab. But I am really sad for the beginners and the casual sewists who just need a quick place to run and grab a couple things. I feel like Joann was that place for the whole time I've been sewing, which is like going on close to 15 years and much, much longer than that. I feel like there is such a gap in the market for that type of place. I'm actually so surprised. I feel like, I don't know, in my opinion, it seems like everything's going for Joann. Like, there's such a surge in people sewing right now, and they have the infrastructure and the retail spaces. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a business expert, but it just feels like this could have been avoided. I don't know. So sad about Joann closing. I may potentially never go back there because like you saw, a lot of it was cleared out and I did my haul. I kind of have what I need for the next few weeks. And so I probably won't be going back there ever, which is really sad. I just remembered that I have to wash all the fabrics first, so I can't do anything tonight with them anyways. I'm gonna run a few cycles, get everything washed, and then I have a whole night to decide, am I gonna dye them with tea in the morning or am I just going to cut into them? Stay tuned to find out, I guess. I've made a decision about the tea dyeing. I've been going back and forth about it all night, my whole hike this morning, and I've decided I'm not going to do it, partially because I wondered if when you do the tea dyeing and it gets those kind of like yellowish brownish stains in a bathroom, maybe that wouldn't look the best. So I'm going to not do the tea bath, the tea dyeing. However, if once I make the whole patchwork curtain, if I feel like the colors are too like bold or bright and I need to tone them down a little bit, at that point I could then decide to do a brief tea dye. So that's the plan. I'm gonna finish up my hike and then we're gonna go home and cut all the fabric. I know I talked about it last time, but the size of this ironing board is life-changing. The fact that I can iron these huge pieces of fabric and not have to shift it around 2 million times is the best thing ever. We have cut out all of the squares and rectangles that we need. So it was actually really helpful. Like I showed you how I mapped everything out in Illustrator before deciding what I wanted to do. That was extremely helpful in the math portion of it because I basically figured I needed a 72 by 74. That is like the size of a standard shower curtain. So I just knew that I needed that much space and then I mapped out how many squares and rectangles I wanted and then figured out what each square and rectangle would need to be to fill up that amount of space. So I have my big squares that are 7 3/4 by 7 3/4. My little squares are 4 1/8 by 4 1/8. And then my rectangles, which are 7 3/4 by 4 1/8. And that includes seam allowance. No, I literally just double checked my math because as I was saying that out loud, I'm like, is that right? I'm like 99% sure I did that right. It's gonna work out. Yeah, because I took the finished measurements, right? Like what the finished size of the squares and rectangles are going to be. And then I added 1/4 inch seam allowance on the sides. I think it's fine. If it's not, we're gonna find out together. So one more note about fabric. I know I showed you a couple different options for this greenish fabric and a couple different options for this like whitish cream fabric. So the green I ended up going with was like the basic quilting cotton. I know I had the other one that was a little bit more linen-y that had that bit of texture to it. I decided to go with this one mainly because it's more translucent. I feel like it's kind of difficult to tell on camera, but like when I hold it up to the light, it has a nice transparency, I guess. Like you can see the light come through it nice. And then the other one was a bit thicker and it was a bit more opaque. And so I decided to go with this one mainly for that reason. And this is like the fabric that I was the most concerned about it being too like bright and stark of a color, but I think it's gonna be fine. So we'll just see. Like I said, if I make the whole shower curtain, put it up and I'm like, oh, those colors are too bright, I can always dye it with tea later down the road. And then this cream fabric, I actually ended up using the viscose linen blend that is more of a, it's closer to a true white than like an ivory or cream. And originally I wanted a cream because in that inspo picture, which I have showed you a million times at this point, but I'm gonna show you again, it's definitely more of a cream. But when I was holding all these fabrics up in the bathroom, because most of the bathroom is finished at this point, so I can kind of like see how these fabrics are gonna look in there. When I was holding them up, the cream colored fabric that I had gotten, which was like a quilting cotton, is basically the exact same color as my walls because the walls are kind of like a creamy color. And I think I need a little bit more contrast. So this definitely comes across more white, like a slightly off-white, but definitely more white. And it's just really pretty and lightweight, and it has a bit of translucency as well, transparency, whatever. And I've quilted with this fabric so many times that it's my favorite. Anyway, those are the fabrics. I was also going to mention, I imagine I will dye things with tea at some point. I've been thinking about it. Like I said, I'd already kind of had it in mind, and I have religiously read this blog post by Bethany Lynn. I'm going to tag her and I'll link her post about dyeing things with tea, but I found it on Pinterest and I do follow her. She sews a bunch of great stuff. She might even have patterns too, now that I think about it. Anyway, she's a great person to follow. You should follow her and see all the stuff that she makes. I will link the post about how she dyes things with tea because it was so helpful to read through her process and get all of her tips. I actually bought everything I need to dye something with tea, so now if I decide I want to do it, I will be prepared. It is a gorgeous day today, both for hiking and for sewing. I'm finally able to wear short sleeves today. In fact, let's do a little fit check really quick. My top is my Sid tie top pattern, and then my pants are my Lane pants, which I wear basically every day. But we are going to get into sewing now. And yesterday I only finished 2 of the rows, I guess. I probably will have the majority of the curtain done today. And then we probably will even get into making the scallops and the bias binding today. End of the day check-in in all, there was 14. Yeah, I think I made 14 rows. I have stitched together 3 of them, as you can see here, and I feel like it is coming together nicely. So that is where we're at. Tomorrow I will finish putting it all together. I'm gonna hold it up in my bathroom and kind of check the colors, make sure that none of these are too bright or just coming off weird. If they are, we'll do a tea bath, which I'm really hoping we won't have to do, but I'm going to mentally prepare for it just in case, or I may spiral. And tomorrow is Saturday. I normally don't sew or work on the weekends, but this whole bathroom renovation and a bunch of other things have thrown me off. I haven't worked a lot this week, which is the nice thing about my job, is I can kind of work when I want to, but then sometimes my work gets kind of punted to the side when other things come up. So I do have a lot to catch up on. I do want to finish this curtain. But before we get to sewing tomorrow, I was already planning on doing one of my very favorite like top 3 hikes in my area tomorrow. The whole thing is gorgeous. It's really secluded. I basically never see anybody on it, and it is one of the prettiest viewpoints. So you guys are really lucky that you get to come with me tomorrow, because I don't do it very often. It's a little bit further out of my way, but it should be very, very beautiful. Told you it was pretty. Normally I hang out here for a bit. There's like a cute bench right there that I'll read on or take a nap or whatever, but it's super wet and it's snowy, as you can probably tell, which is crazy because it's like 65 degrees today down in the valley, but just kind of cold and wet up here. So I'll admire the view for a minute, but I want to get back home. I want to finish the curtain today. All right, we are back. I have been finishing up assembling the curtain all day today. It's taken longer than I thought it would, but we're in a good place. So this is what we're looking at. Let me unfold it all the way. So that should give you a good idea of how the shower curtain is looking. So it is about 72 inches wide and like 74, 75 inches long. I went and held it up in my bathroom to assess the color situation. And I feel pretty confident about leaving it how it is. My bathroom, the walls are like a cream color, and there's not a ton of natural light. The window is pretty small and the light bulbs are like sort of warmish. And so I feel like the whole room is kind of a warm, muted color. And so it looks quite nice to have a more like bold, contrasting colors that this curtain is. So I'm not gonna do the tea dyeing, but I have a bee in my bonnet about it, and I'm sure I will do it for another project down the road. I also wanted to mention, which I'm sure you saw in the construction, but I did use my serger when attaching all of these patchwork pieces. Normally when I'm doing patchwork or quilting something, I use my sewing machine to attach pieces together, because those seams are going to be hidden in quilt backing or some other part of the project. Because this shower curtain isn't actually going to be quilted, it's just going to be patchwork, the seams would have been exposed. And so instead of using my sewing machine, I used my serger so that it attached the 2 pieces at the same time as finishing the seam. So I did want to mention that. The last thing that's left to do is put the scalloped edge around these, you know, raw edges of the shower curtain. Before I get into that though, I did want to mention on the back side of the curtain at the top. So the scalloped edge is going to be on the 2 sides and the bottom of the shower curtain. The top edge though, this is the back of it. The top edge, I'm not going to do the scallops, and that's going to be where the hooks hang in, right? And I'm gonna put in buttonholes so that the hooks have places to go into. But because these fabrics are quite lightweight, if I didn't reinforce the fabric somehow, those hooks would really like pull at the fabric and make it look kind of like flimsy looking. So what I have done is along the top edge of the curtain here, I have put this strip of fabric. And essentially what I did is I cut a 3-inch strip of fabric that's the same width as the shower curtain, so 52 or 72 inches. And then I cut an identical piece of interfacing, which if you've never used interfacing before, it's a material that sticks to your fabric and reinforces and strengthens the fabric. It makes it like thicker. I used a fusible interfacing, so one side of it is kind of bumpy and the other side is smooth, and you place the bumpy side down on the fabric, iron it on there, and it sticks to the fabric, and like I said, reinforces it. So I attached the interfacing, and then I folded up a little hem here to finish the bottom edge of that strip, and then I laid it on top of the top edge of this shower curtain and sewed it in place with my serger so that there are no raw edges. I'm very, very glad that I did all of that, because now holding on to this top edge, it's much sturdier. And once I sew the buttonholes in place, I'm feeling very confident that the top edge of the curtain will be crisp and not flimsy. So that's kind of the finished effect there. Again, that's the back side. The front side, you can't see that reinforced fabric there. So it does kind of come up right now, but once I sew the buttonholes down, it will stay in place better. And then I just basted the edges there. All we have left to do is put the scalloped edge around the other 3 sides. I decided to use the pink linen fabric that I got from Joann. I'm going to make my own bias tape with it. I don't really like using pre-made bias tape, so I make my own a lot. I know that intimidates some people. Maybe I'm just used to it, but I feel like it's pretty easy. My method for making the bias tape is just going to be cutting a bunch of strips on the bias, that 45-degree angle. I've decided to cut my strips 2 inches wide, which is going to make 1/2-inch bias tape. You can buy pre-made 1/2-inch bias tape. Like I said, I'm making my own. So I'll cut a bunch of those 2-inch strips, and then I sew them together. And when you do sew them together, you need to make sure that you're lining those edges on that 45-degree angle. So you line up the bias strips, attach them all together, and then what you end up with is a super, super long chain of bias tape. I also have bias tape makers, which are a little piece of metal that you feed your flat bias pieces into, or your flat bias chain that you've made, and it spits it out folded into bias tape, which is the form you'll need it to be in. So I'll be doing all of that cutting and attaching and folding and ironing and pressing, and what I'll be left with is a huge spiral of my own bias tape. Some people have other methods, preferred methods for making bias tape. I've also made continuous bias tape, which maybe I'll put a link in the description for a tutorial for that. Last thing I'll mention, how I determined how much I would need. Like I said, the 2 edges of my shower curtain, they're about 74 inches, and then the bottom edge is going to be about 72 inches. And so I added up those 3 edges together. But because the bias tape is not going to be straight lines, it's going to be curved, I took those 3 sides, added up together. Hold on, let me give me a calculator. 74 plus 74 plus 72, 220. And then normally that would be how much you'd need. I am kind of guessing very liberally that I will need probably about 30% more bias tape. Maybe I'll end up needing more. So I'm gonna take that 220 and multiply it by 1.3. And that comes out to 286 inches of bias tape. Sounds like a lot, kind of is a lot. So I'm estimating I'll need about 286 inches. I'll probably end up overshooting that. I always make a bit more bias tape than I think I'll need just in case. We're just gonna kind of figure it out as we go. Time jump. I have finished the bias tape. Here's my little pancake. It's all like spiraled together. So that is finished. It just took me like about an hour this morning. Now we are going to draft the scalloped edge of the curtain. So what I have here is 2 pieces of cardstock that I have taped together. They're kind of just scrap pieces of cardstock I had on hand. And this is going to involve a little bit of math, but it's not super precise. It's more just a hodgepodge method to make a wavy edge on my curtain. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little bit of a grid on this cardstock because I will need to use it as a reference. I have drawn a 1/2 inch by 1 inch grid. 1/2 inches going up, 1 inch across. So now what we're going to do is I basically want to make a wave shape on this. I know that I want it to be 2 inches tall and 9 inches in total length, but 4.5 inches from, what's that, like the base to the crest of the wave. I'm gonna mark 4.5 inches first, 1, 2, 3, and I'll make that line darker. 2 inches up right here. So this is going to be the crest of the wave, and then the bottom will start here. I need to find the halfway point between here. So halfway between 0 and 4, 2 1/4, or 4.5, I guess. There. And then halfway between 1 and 2 is just 1. I suppose I could have done that a little better. So this is where the wave will start. It'll hit halfway and then it'll reach the top, but it's not just going to be a straight line. It's gonna curve, right? So I know I want it to hit here, and I'm just gonna kind of freehand draw a curve. All right, that looks mostly fine, I think. And then I'm gonna do same thing on the other side. Okay, I feel fairly good about this curve. So now I'm just going to cut it out. And I know you're not supposed to use your rotary cutter for paper. I do it all the time and I'm not mad about it. I feel like that's pretty good. I'm gonna try to fold it in half and see how symmetrical it is. I'm not like super stressed about it, but it would be good if it was pretty close. Oh my gosh, that's not bad at all. Look at that, it's fairly symmetrical. There's just a little peeking up here that I'll trim. Okay, I feel good about this. So actually what I've decided to do, I have the curve that I made here, and this is like what I cut it out of, right? And I feel like it might actually be easier to trace from this paper. So this is the one that I'm going to use, but I guess you could do it whatever way feels natural to you. I have finished tracing all the lines on the edges. I've folded the curtain in half and pinned it together, so I only had to do the waves on basically 1/2 of the curtain, and then I'll cut it so that it's symmetrical. But I did want to point out how I did the bottom here. I did the waves and met them kind of in this corner. They didn't meet exactly in the same place. Originally, I did have them meeting in the same place. You can see I have this erased line here, but then it didn't add up along the bottom edge correctly. So this corner here is a little bit like lopsided and wonky, but I feel like it's gonna be fine because it still looks kind of just wavy. So I sort of just tried to meet them as best they could be met, and it will be symmetrical on the other side of the curtain, so I don't think it'll look that crazy. So now I'm going to cut around these edges that I have drawn, and then we will get to pinning or clipping on the bias binding. As I'm pinning this, I'm realizing that I never really explained or kind of got into our bathroom renovation. So our house that we live in now, we moved in here like a couple years ago. The people who lived here before us did a handful of like little like renovation and improvement things, bathroom included in that. And aesthetically, like when we moved in, everything looked like pretty nice, you know, not like fancy or anything, but things were like somewhat cute and nice and put together and whatever. Now that we've lived here a couple years, it is pretty obvious that they really just DIY'd everything and didn't do a very good job. Nothing against DIYing. As we know, I built this place. I definitely didn't know what I was doing. Had to do a lot of Googling, figuring out there's probably a lot of things I didn't do perfectly. However, some of the things that they did that they clearly didn't do a great job with are concerning, such as the plumbing in the bathroom. There was like a lot of water damage and leakage that we could see was happening, but weren't quite sure what the extent of it was. Most noticeably in the walls, like the wall right by the shower, there was definitely water getting into the wall somehow. We tried resealing our tub multiple times, kind of trying to figure out where it was coming from, doing quick fixes, but the wall was like getting wavy-ish and you could just see there was water behind it. And then same with our floor. The flooring that they had put in were like vinyl tiles that you stick down onto the floor. When we moved in, they were on the floor. And then over the past 2 years, they've started to kind of like shift and move, and you can see the floor is kind of like wobbly, which is a professional term. So we knew there was water damage. We weren't totally sure how much. It was getting concerning to us. We didn't really want to do like a huge bathroom renovation, but we were worried that the water damage was getting to be kind of severe, and the bathroom aesthetically just wasn't like the best ever. It wasn't like the worst, but it wasn't great. It wasn't to our taste. It was kind of just like bleh. In fact, I took some videos before we ripped everything out, so I'll kind of show you what the bathroom looked like. It doesn't look great. I'm sort of embarrassed to even show that, but like I said, it wasn't our work, wasn't our choices. We finally got to the point where we were really concerned about the water. We felt like it was kind of an urgent situation. So we hired somebody to renovate our bathroom for us, which is the first time we've ever worked with like a contractor on something like this. We've done home things before. Like we've renovated a bathroom in the past at a much smaller scale. We've done little home renovation things on our own. Like I said, I have built this, but something like a bathroom where there's like plumbing involved, we needed to move some lights, so electrical stuff, and also the fact that it is the only bathroom in our house. We knew we needed it done well and done as quickly as possible, so that involved getting somebody to do the work for us. That has been underway over the past couple weeks. Our family was without a bathroom, so we did a variety of like staying at Airbnbs, staying with family, trying to, you know, have toilet and shower access as best we could. It was very chaotic and stressful. Thankfully, the actual like structural stuff was fine. It was just the drywall and some of the like plywood that was down on the floor that was ruined. And he told us, you could see once he took everything out, the shower was leaking, the sink was leaking, and the toilet was leaking. So you could see like rings of water around where all of the different things were. It was awful. But thankfully nothing structural, nothing that is going to be a problem anymore. We replaced everything, put in a whole new bathroom. So I'm excited to show you guys what it looks like now. The actual like work is done, so we have a functional bathroom again. I'm just finishing things like this, shower curtain, and I got some new like towels and whatever. Feeling very grateful that we were able to tackle this project, get it taken care of. But I'll also say, we were never planning to be at the house we're in now for more than a few years maybe, especially with our kids getting older now. My oldest is 10, my youngest is 6, and so them getting older, they like need more space to live, they need more time in the bathroom, you know. We're feeling a bit cramped in our house, so we'll probably be moving in the next, I don't know, probably the next year. It could be this summer at the very earliest, or we could be here for like another year or two. It just kind of depends what houses pop up. I am very sad about moving, mostly happy about moving, but I'm sad a bit because it means leaving my studio. So wherever we move after this, we'll either need a house that has like a room or area big enough and isolated enough that I can work, or we'll have to build a new shed, which when I was making this one, it was so much work and I was thinking like, oh, I'm never doing this again. But now that there's been enough time, it's been, gosh, almost a year since I finished this place. Now that it's been a while, I feel like, yeah, I could do it again. It almost sounds kind of fun. And if I do another shed, I would this time probably vlog the whole thing, because at the time when I made this one, I wasn't super duper active on YouTube. And like I said, I sort of didn't know what I was doing, so it was kind of stressful. I couldn't have imagined trying to film it at the same time. But now that I've done it before, I feel like I could tackle it. The shower curtain is all the way completed. I am gonna go hang it up in just a minute. I just wanted to give a couple like notes and takeaways while I still have it in hand. I finished it off with the buttonholes, which I showed you. I have a buttonhole tutorial that I can link. It's within like a sewing machine tutorial. So if you want more information about that, you can go watch more explicit instructions of like what a buttonhole foot is and how to do that. I did those, finished the edges. I also gave the whole curtain a big iron, especially with the scalloped edges here. Running an iron over them afterward helped a lot to just make them look really even and flat, because with the waves and the bias binding, since it is a bit stretchy, they can get a little bit like wonky and warped. Pressing them with an iron just helps that sit nice and flat. Another thing, I think that I maybe would have made the bias tape itself a little bit thicker. I was worried about having the bias tape be too thick, because then that would make it more difficult to attach with curves and sew with curves. And so I didn't want to have this be too thick, but in hindsight, this was pretty easy. So I feel like I would have made, let's see, I cut 2-inch strips for this, which made 1/2-inch bias tape. I honestly may have even bumped it up to like 3-inch strips, just to have like a thicker border here. I did end up with a bit leftover bias tape, which is good. Like I said, I made a bit more than I thought that I would use. This is more than I expected to have when I was done. And I didn't actually measure exactly how much bias tape I made. I just know that I made more than I expected to use by a bit. Anyway, if you are doing the method that I made, where I added up the length that I needed and then multiplied it to account for those curves, I almost feel like I might not have needed to multiply it. Perhaps something with like the stretching of the bias tape, because it does like stretch and pull a little bit, you know, as you're curving over the curves, may have accounted for that extra. So anyways, just a note, but I'm not mad about it, because I really, really like this linen. It worked very well as bias tape, and so now I have this extra little roll for next time I need to use bias tape. Okay, let's go hang up the curtain. I am so happy with how the curtain turned out. I think it looks so cute in my bathroom. I'm really just pleased overall with my entire bathroom. And as a reminder, here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like now. Huge improvement. It really does make such a big difference to feel relaxed and at peace and surrounded by cute things in your home. I really do need to make more home projects. I don't do it enough. So if you have any ideas, let me know other home projects I need to get into. Thank you guys for sewing with me this week, and I actually will have another vlog coming out in just a few days, because it's my birthday this weekend, and I have a sort of tradition of going on a little solo trip for my birthday. And so I will be headed to the coast. Oregon coast is just like an hour away from my house. So I'm doing a little solo coast beach trip. I'm gonna be like hiking and thrifting and reading and crocheting. I have so many good crochet projects I wanna get into. So I'm gonna be vlogging my weekend, and I think it's gonna be really cute and fun. So that should be up in just a few days. Love you guys, appreciate you guys, and thank you for coming with me on all my adventures.